Hi, I'm Sharon. I'm one of the co-founders of the Women in Lighting project, and we'd like to welcome you to our second interview, which is part of our sort of branching out into women that work in entertainment lighting. Our guest for today is Anne Militello, who not only works in entertainment lighting, but also in art and architecture and education. So I'm just going to ask Anne to introduce herself to kick off.
Great. Hi, thank you, Sharon. I'm Anne Militello, and I have been a lighting designer all my life. And I started in early entertainment, if you call working in clubs entertainment, but that's how I started. And I've subsequently branched off into theme park lighting, working at Disney Imagineering as an Imagineer, and started my own company after I left there doing architectural lighting, but I still maintain a close relationship with the stage. I design concert tours and operas. I've worked on Broadway. So I very much have an entertainment base, and I've branched out from there and do all types of things, including making art with light. So,
Have you got any formal education or qualifications in lighting, or you've just learned as you've gone along?
Pretty much learned as I went along. However, when back in the day, when I was starting, when I was interested in it, I was in college for just a few years, and I took a lighting class because it was, required to do some technical theater, and it blew me away. One semester of one class was enough to change me, even though I had already been, working around theaters as a volunteer in high school, in the professional theaters, doing whatever I can. I always liked playing with the gels. And so taking this lighting class was amazing. So it wasn't, I took a class and then I hightailed it to San Francisco, worked in clubs, and then I moved a few years later to New York City, and there was a school called Lester Polikoff Studio and Forum of Stage Design, and it was run by a scenic designer, Lester Polikoff, who had a beautiful studio in Greenwich Village, and Broadway designers would come on weekends and teach classes. So you could be a working professional or a young designer and take a Saturday morning class. And I did that for a few years. And really what they taught was how to design lights in the traditional Broadway style, how to do Broadway lighting plots and paperwork, and also a lot of the technique of traditional theater, really traditional theater. So I didn't get a certificate from there. I was pretty much auditing classes, and then the rest of the time really was my just being in the field and working constantly. So yeah, I don't have a degree from anywhere, which is hard to say because now I teach lighting. So but things have changed, so you kind of can't do it that way, right? The way I did it at this point in time. So I was lucky to be able to get so much theater experience. Sounds funny saying field for theater, but
but there's so much more. There's so many more opportunities now in education, aren't there, around the world, which we didn't used to have when we were younger. It's quite funny because our first guest, Mildred, was talking about when the very first thing she started with was sorting out cutting gels, and I said to her, the very first lighting thing I did was sorting out gels. It's kind of maybe it's a thing.
You know what? They gave the girls the job to sort out the gels. When I was working, as like I say, I volunteered at the theaters when I was in high school just to get out of the house. It was Buffalo, it was freezing, so anyway, and and the stagehands, the older man would, I was often the only girl, so I would get the gels. I'm like, yeah, I'll take the gel cutting, because that was the most fun. It's like, oh my God, you just relish in these deep, beautiful, deep magentas and blues. You can barely put it down. You don't want to cut it. You don't want to hurt. They're so beautiful. So I really, yeah, I took to it from, one of the reasons why I took to it.
So that kind of leads into this question is, do you remember the first moment when you sort of realized you had a sort of excitement or passion for light? Was it with the gels, or was it before then?
I thought about that question, and actually I have a very distinct memory when I was very young, like possibly 5 or 6. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, and my parents were Sicilian, immigrants. My grandparents were immigrants. My parents were born here, but they were very devout Roman Catholics. So we had to go to church all the time. And at that time, it was like the masses were sung in Latin. It was there was so much pageantry. There was so much drama. So I remember the church that I went to when I was young, Holy Cross Church, had beautiful stained glass windows, really beautiful stained glass windows. And in the morning, the light would pour in through the stained glass. And, the priests, especially in high ceremonies like, Lent or, around Easter, would wear these, amazingly, for Lent, deep purple robes. So I remember the smell of the incense, the deep colors of the costumes, the robes, the deep violets, and the red and the blue and the magenta and purple light coming through the stained glass windows, hitting them. And those memories, that vision, those senses have stayed with me my entire life, of this rich color and this ceremony and this kind of sacred atmosphere around some kind of transcendent light. And it really hit me then. And so when I was introduced to gels, later on, when I was a teenager, it stuck, and then I loved the life of the theater. I wanted to be around that atmosphere, and and then with subsequently meeting certain people that influenced me, it all fell into place. But I remember that really distinctly, those colors. So yeah, I soaked up those colors young.
That's a good way to lead into asking about mentors. So, the people that have inspired you, or the people that have really shaped your journey. Is there anyone you would sort of like to share with us?
I think the most important person to me in my career, in my life, when I first moved to New York, well, there were 2 people. I had moved to San Francisco after leaving my few years in trying out college. I moved to San Francisco and I worked in nightclubs, and I worked as a roadie. There were no females at that time, and we can talk about that later, doing what I was doing. I didn't meet any. Maybe there were 1 or 2 or a couple in the industry, but this was, really, we're talking the late 70s. So it's you're hard pressed to find anyone working. But in any case, I also worked in theater in San Francisco. I always kept close to theater, and I met Sam Shepard, the playwright, who's also was a movie actor. He passed away 2 years ago now. And he was very influential. I just loved the theater, the words of his plays, and he had introduced me. He brought a designer in from New York, Beverly Emmons, who was a dance and theater and Broadway designer from New York, who was an amazing intellectual and incredibly transcendent artist. Her work was unbelievable, and he had brought her to do a show in San Francisco and asked me to be her assistant, which I didn't even know what that meant at that time. So I just hung around, and their dynamic, the dynamic of the work, what I saw visually really kind of blew me away, and she gave me some opportunities in New York. But when I subsequently moved to New York, I found another designer who really had a big influence on me. His name was John Dodd, or Johnny Dodd as we called him, and who's not in any, he's in books, but he's in like Andy Warhol's pop culture book. He's not in the lighting books because he was considered such a rebel and such an outcast because he was so daring with color, and he went way against the conventions of what people were supposed to do with light. And he really had his own way of looking at things, which he interpreted characters through light and was very freeform. And he was from kind of a Dada-esque kind of avant-garde type of thinking and movement, and he really took me under his wing, and I just helped him a lot, setting up shows or running lights for him, and he would come to the shows that I was doing and always coerce me to go further. And his big message to me was, go as far out as you can possibly go, and then you can bring it back in later. But if you lose the fear of doing a bold statement, it will free you up to have a more balanced design ethic. So, and I got to play around. My God, I was lighting punk bands and experimental theater. So I really could go far and pretty far out. But it really took a lot to pull that out of me. One often thinks, I can't light somebody's face in magenta or green. I can't, oh my God, but if you've got the material to do it with, and you can push yourself out, it's really freeing. So I think that he, was a very big person. And subsequently I met Maria Irene Fornes, the Cuban playwright. So I'm naming two writers and two visionaries of their own work that really inspired me when I was working. Sam Shepard and Irene, subsequently I designed for Sam Shepard and Maria Irene Fornes, and they were just amazing people. Just their words and their descriptions of the feelings that they wanted, and my information from my friend Johnny to try to interpret and really get into the characters. Those were the people that were real mentors to me. So, not a likely bunch.
Oh, they all sound amazing. Extremely jealous never to have met people like that exciting.
Right place, right time.
Is there ever a time in your career where you've sort of felt like changing career or doubted yourself? I mean, you're saying that Johnny brought a lot out of you that wasn't, you had to work to take that out. Is there a time that you thought you might change from lighting?
Not really. Boy, I'm a one note kind of person. No, doubted myself. Yes. Doubted what I loved and wanted to keep doing. I really haven't, except that the pandemic has been, tough on all of us, and it gives one thought. But I'm so inspired by light in general. But when I've had the deepest, darkest moments I've had have usually been in tech rehearsals for shows that, again, I was doing something that I was daring myself to do that I hadn't done before, that I was nervous and afraid of what's it going to look like, how is it going to, do I even know what I'm doing? There's sometimes as a lighting designer, especially in performance anyway, where you're almost to the point of the show opening and you have those panic moments of, I don't know what I'm doing. Why did anybody hire me? I can't do this. I suck. This is horrible. And the fear that comes, you can't sleep for a few days. You wake up in the middle of the night going, that's it. It's the downlight with the soft Fresnel lens that needs to fix the whole thing, and the kind of the madness that goes with it. But it all comes out the wash on opening night, and people are like clapping and everyone's like, you did, that was amazing. Oh, I loved your work. You're like, and you have to, kind of cut the cord of the tension and fear. And you try to relax into the celebration of the work. And so those are the darkest, have been. It's not so much anymore, now that I've been doing it for so long, but those have been the times where I'm like, I have no business in doing what I do. I know nothing, others can do it so much better, but it's always, but no, it's never made me seriously consider doing anything else.
I know that both Martin and I can completely relate to that description of the fear that comes when you're trying something out and you can't believe for a second you're actually going to pull it off. And it's a very low moment. I totally understand the arc you've described, but yeah. I mean, we said at the beginning that you've worked on all these different sort of genres of lighting. Have you got a favourite? Is it the punk band? Is it a piece of light art, or is it the building? Is there one that you love more than another?
I don't want to just say no so flippantly, but it depends on where I am at any given point in time of my life, because there's certain things about all of them that make them so attractive. For example, doing light art, which maybe I love that the most. However, what I don't love the most is all the time one spends with their own thoughts, mulling around an idea, and being in a studio, oftentimes by myself when I've done these pieces, because I can't stop and I don't turn off easily. So I'll go for 24, maybe 48 hours without sleeping while I'm trying to create something, and the madness comes over, and from really being sleep deprived more than anything else, now that you look at it. But the solitary time, which doesn't always serve me. I can be, and it's great when it does, but when you're working in concerts or theater, you're working with groups of people, and with architecture as well, you're working with other people. And so your creative time often comes when you're sitting at a tech table, or in a office studio with a group of other designers, architects, interior designers, or in the theater with the director, the other designers, the actors on stage. Everybody's there, and you are pretty much working as a team, as a designer. And sometimes other people's thoughts and ideas or emotions, affect you, run through you like a conduit, and it fuels creativity. Whereas when you're doing light art in a studio by yourself, you've really got yourself to go into, and you have to go in deep in order to create any meaningful art. I mean, anyway, that's my feeling. And so they're two very different things, and they can both be scary, and they can both produce amazing results, but you have to be kind of geared emotionally for it. So favorite, I don't know, because I go back and forth. There's sometimes I'm like, I can't stand working with people. I just want to be in the studio by myself. Screw everybody else. And there are sometimes where like, I'm driving myself crazy. I need a team of people. So,
so wanted to ask, we know you've got this incredible sort of backlog of projects. Is there something, an achievement you would say that you're most proud of, or you consider like a significant milestone in your career?
I think that for me, a few of them, but winning an OBIE Award, which is the Off-Broadway theater awards, I got pretty much what they call Sustained Excellence Award, which meant my body of work, not just for one show, but at the time when these awards were given, they're still there. It's changed a little bit. It's a little bit broader, but it was, there's the Tony Award, and then there's the OBIE Award. The Tony Awards for Broadway, the OBIE Award is for things that were not on Broadway, that were more, non-commercial. So I was very proud that I wasn't always working in the commercial realm, that I got to experiment and do kind of breakthrough, interesting theater work, which wouldn't have been appropriate for, the mass audiences of Broadway. But anyway, there's the award for excellence in that, for that award is a high honor, and I got that fairly young. I was still in my 20s, and but people didn't know, because I was working so much. It seemed like I'd been there forever. I had so much going on, and so many shows. And so that was kind of an honor, and it came as a surprise to me, and I hadn't realized people were paying attention or watching, or that critics, were really kind of dissecting and looking at the art of what I was doing, and so that really had a big impact on me, and that also helped propel me to keep going. To create better work and newer pieces. But I think that in terms of performance, it's in concert design, playing with or doing lighting for the musician Ryuichi Sakamoto, who's a composer and pianist, and we toured the smallest courtyards and piazzas in Italy, and public parks in obscure small Italian towns. For me, was one of the most memorable times of creating lighting on ruins, and really falling so in love with this art form of being able to create images on the most beautiful scenery in the world was another thing that kept me going. But also, and this is a long answer, but one more is the designing the lighting for the new 42nd Street studio building in Times Square in New York, where pretty much the architects and the client trusted me enough to do really my own personal moving watercolor lighting scheme on a 12-story building in Times Square, which seems like Times Square dwarfs that, but at that time when they were renovating or redoing all of 42nd Street and Times Square, and trying to bring it back from the kind of it was all messed up, destroyed. There was a lot of destruction on the street from years of neglect, and so they were trying to bring it back. Now it's a monster, but they really gave me carte blanche, and to debut the lighting scheme, we had this event where they closed off half of 42nd Street, and we got musicians on the catwalks of the building going up outside, and dancers bungeed to the side of the building, flying off the building with lighting. And we did a huge light show, and I don't know how many, I think 1 million people saw it that night when I did a live kind of light show in the building with the music and the dancers to debut a watercolor lighting piece on a building, and it was very much written about. I was being interviewed by this television station and that newspaper and magazine, and for my own piece, but it was so high profile. And I think that just the circumstances to make that happen were so amazing, one thing after another. The people that I knew, the people that trusted me, the technology that allowed me to do it at that time, the freedom of having the idea, and the people along in construction that came along for the ride to do it, and having an amazing client. So I think that seals a place in me of deep of a very big milestone. So
yeah, sounds like it was a stunning opening night.
I mean, I called it the big turn on.
Is there, yeah, no, it sounds like it. Did you have one of those fake switches?
The funny thing was there was talk originally, the notorious Rudy Giuliani, who was notorious for being Trump's crooked lawyer. Okay, I don't know my audience, all of them. But anyway, he was the mayor of New York at the time, and there was some talk of like him turning it on, even though I was doing this whole light show live in front of people, but I was in a room with a computer overlooking the whole street on Times Square with my programmer. But there was some talk of making a fake switch so he could turn it on, because it was really the beginning of the resurgence of bringing back 42nd Street from years of, being crime ridden and, burned out and a mess into this new revitalization. So there was some talk of, having him put a dummy switch and having him do it, and the balloons go off and the thing. And I was like, oh no, please. And then I don't know, I never heard exactly the reason. I think there was some political scuffle where he wasn't going to happen. So yeah, that it wasn't a switch. It was me up in a room with my amazing programmer. But yeah, that was funny.
I mean, your career's spanned quite a sort of, I don't know how to say it politely. Your career's been long. You spanned quite a few decades. So I say it in the nicest possible way.
Yes.
Is there, you must have seen a lot of changes
yes.
in time with technology and the opportunities as a designer that you're afforded with that. I mean, what do you think the biggest change has been in that period?
Well, and yeah, I'm, you don't have to worry about beating around the bush with me. I'm kind of older, but I have, I was around before computer consoles became common, and when the computer console was introduced to a chorus line, it was the first console used on Broadway, really, in theater. I wasn't quite around then. I came a bit later, but I'd heard all the stories. But in the theaters that I started working in, my God, there weren't computers yet. And certainly not on the rock shows. There weren't computers yet. So it was all done by hand. It was great because in theater, you're running somebody else's show, so you have to take your cues, but the timing was your own body. It's like, okay, this cue is in a 10 count. We used to call it 10 count or 5 count. You have to count to 1,000, 1, 1,000, 2, but really what you're doing, if you're a good board operator and a good showrunner, is you're watching the acting and or hearing the sound of the music on stage, and you used your own hands and your own body to feel through it to make sure that timing was right within the, kind of arbitrary count that was either given to you or that you created for your own work. But you could feel it. So when computers came in and you no longer had a human whose flesh and bones were like pushing the electricity through, but it was just a tap of a button, that was a hard transition in a way, because it's like, how am I going to substitute natural timing and natural rhythm into a damn computer? I mean, so that was a tough one to learn how to do. And then the other one came in with LEDs. It's like, I know what a halogen does. I know what tungsten does. And then all the, machinations that have gone through with the generations of LEDs becoming, finally something that we can work with that are good, with color, temperature, and everything else like that. Now there's the whole thing of the control systems and, wireless control and all kinds of stuff. So I've seen a lot of things come through, computer technology and LEDs hand in hand in terms of the biggest things.
I'm also quite, had quite a long time in lighting. So I sort of remember hand operated boards, and I remember people sort of creating incredible sort of contraptions in order to be able to do the various faders at the same time, because obviously you've only got two hands, or someone else having to come in and do things, or using sticks or whatever. It's very, very creative to make those cues happen.
Right, and you had to be dexterous, like if you weren't dexterous with your fingers, then you had to make those sticks and all kinds of stuff, but your whole body got into it sometimes. You're like, there's no way I'm going to get all this plus that other one. So sometimes the elbows and the feet came in. It was so much fun. People out there missing out on now.
Yeah. Is there someone that you wish you'd had the chance to, you would love to still collaborate with, a lighting designer, a stage designer, or somebody in your sort of, wish list?
I think I would love to, in terms of stage design, I'd love to do a show with Ez Devlin. I think that her work is mind-blowingly unbelievable. In terms of lighting design, I'm such a fan girl of so many lighting designers. I see people like the designer Sarah Landau, John Torres, who's a friend who does Robert Wilson stuff. Sarah Landau does tons of, music acts. She's brilliant. So many, the list, Willie Williams he's done amazing work. So I don't know. I don't know how one collaborates with another lighting designer. It's like, do you think that color? No, I think this shade should be, that's a little tough. So set designers, yeah, I'd love to collaborate, but I think Ez Devlin's high on my list. But lighting designers, that'd be scary, because, you want to, everybody's passionate about, color and movement, and you feel it. And so it's intuitive, and to have that be the product of two people.
That must be why Martin and I argue so much when we work on lighting projects.
It's like, no, it should not be cut. That light is in the wrong place. Well, no, that looks good. So I don't know. It's kind of tough.
Let's just sort of move on towards the end. Just talk a bit about women in lighting. Like you said earlier that you were one of the only women working at that time. What do you think it's like now? Do you believe women are given equal opportunities in the work field, or what's your opinion on the state of play today?
I think it's so much better. I mean, there's so many more women, which is fantastic. And I've seen, the different fields with theater, concert design, and also, architecture. And it moves around. It moves around. It was that theater was the most welcoming arena for women, and that the theatrical lighting designers were the top, were always female. That is shifted. The concert industry, it was only guys. That's shifting towards women, and some of these female designers are amazing. Sooner Routhier, Sarah Landau, Suzanne Sasek. There's others. Amazing work, amazing. So that's shifting in a positive direction. Architecture, I see so many women in architecture. And that's amazing. And I'm so comfortable and feel so good there. It's funny because theater was always like the pinnacle of being, of women being the pioneers and being definitely equal footing, if there weren't more women. That's changed now. It's gone the other way. So I think over time the scale kind of moves around, the graph kind of moves into, where women are regarded. But in terms of the concert industry, it's still some of the old values of that women shouldn't be doing this are still entrenched in some of the older professionals working, and it's we're almost there, but we're not quite there yet.
It also, what we've found out with this project is it varies from country to country. So obviously the US and the UK, the field of equality is much, much better. Whereas when we're talking to Mildred, our first guest in this, she's the only female working in stage lighting in her whole country. So it is different from place to place. But it's good that we can share our knowledge with those other countries. So
yeah, and I should have prefaced that by talking about the fact that in the United States, being very lucky to live here and to have been born here, and the opportunities that have afforded me, where it's not the same yet in these other countries, but I truly believe it will come.
Well, what Mildred was saying is how amazed and inspired she's been by everyone who's wanted to share information and knowledge with her. So, and I think that's something that anyone that works in lighting is very good at. We're good at helping and sharing and inspiring one another. On that note, what would you say to sort of a young woman who wanted to start out working in the field of lighting in whichever avenue? Would you have some advice?
It's hard, the advice. There's so much and so little, but and I do teach lighting students now. It's kind of a lot of the work that I do now is being an educator at California Institute of the Arts. But it's really about keeping your eyes open, learning. I think that in terms of being a female person or identifying as a female person working in the field, we don't have to worry so much, like is it with in any profession where you're trying to gain equality. You just want to be true to yourself, the person that you are. You don't want to be I don't know, I hate to say this, but you don't want to be too flamboyant or too eccentric unless you're working in a certain group. You want to be able to go through genres. You want to be able to pass through. As a lighting designer, really you're a conduit for a means of communication using this amazing knowledge of light. Keep learning about light but be able to move in and out of kind of environments and places and people without being too much of a force, want to very gently, not so gentle, but easily flow like the river through these places so that you can experience all of this rather than coming in with a hammer and trying to break everything down, and gracefully, just for men and women too, you gracefully peruse the thing. You're true to yourself. You learn as much as you can about your medium. And if you love it, that's where you belong. Because if you don't love it, it's kind of tough. You're like, what am I doing this for? But if you have that really deep passion for it and love for the art of, creating space with light, you can't go wrong, but you can't fight. You can't be combative. In a way, you can get your message through and very powerfully by just, being easy and going into it.
It's a skill, isn't it? Sort of selling ideas and, bringing ideas with other people's ideas and fusing it all together. There's a lot of special skills involved in working in light with
right.
light.
Yes, you have to be able to listen to people and to interpret what you're hearing, because, you know, as designers, we're designers. Otherwise, we'd be having a different conversation about being solo artists. But because we are working in a medium where we're, I shouldn't say the word servicing people, but we're creating something for people, and that's our mission. And so we have to be able to listen and kind of interpret and change. You have to be flexible, real flexible. So, you know, you have to have your costume changes for each. Oh, it's like, what? I'm going to meet the, you know, this particular group of people who are into this. Well, it's not like you want to, you know, position yourself as somebody you're not, but you can do a little bit of camouflaging for each one, because you don't want to be the, you know, the focal point. You want to slide in there so the light speaks for itself, and not the human, not the ego, you know. So however you do that, it's a theatrical art to move around.
On that, I'm going to have one more question, and that is how does light continue to inspire you? What do you go out? Do you search for things, or like, do you go to see light art, or is it natural light, or, you know, what do you do to keep that fresh?
I just keep my eyes open every day. You know, I can't help it. I can't help seeing how light affects things all the time. It's not a curse. It's really a blessing. Just every glimmer and, you know, glint of light hitting something, every shadow, I'm always keenly aware. I can't stop. From the time I wake up in the morning and I open my eyes and I see the lights coming through the curtains, and maybe there's a different reflection. Oh, there's, you know, a bird out there that's fluttering, and now there's, you know, shadows coming through that I can't stop. So, not one thing in particular. And I do love seeing other people's work. I love seeing light art, and I love seeing other people's concert work. You know, I don't go to shows thinking, okay, well, that's okay, I could have done better. I don't, you know, it's like everybody's so different, and it's like everybody's vision is to be celebrated. You know, I'm an easy one to please in a way, because there's not much I don't like. So I just relish in the joy of all of it. So how does it continue to inspire me? It's, well, I have open eyes, but I can also see light with your eyes closed. You can, you know, your dreams, you see light. I'm just always aware of it. I think it just happened young, and I don't think it'll ever, that light won't go away, you know. So anyway, I don't know if that was a good answer or not, but
I think it's a really good way to end. And I love the idea that you sort of, you know, we should find the sort of good light in everything. Like you say, there isn't a, you know, a situation where you go and see something and hate it. You should always be looking for, you know, something in it that is positive and inspiring. Yeah. So thank you very much. As always, we love talking to you. So.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay.